The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Professor Elena Martinez didn't notice. Her bloodshot eyes remained fixed on the quantum computer's holographic display, watching impossible data streams cascade across the luminescent interface. The basement laboratory of the Geneva Research Institute hummed with the soft whir of cooling systems and the occasional beep of monitoring equipment, sounds that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat during these long months of research. "This can't be right," she muttered for the 100th time that evening, her fingers dancing across the haptic controls with practiced precision. For 3 months, her team had been pushing the boundaries of quantum entanglement theory, desperately seeking a breakthrough in faster-than-light communication. The project had consumed her life, destroyed her marriage, and cost her countless sleepless nights, but nothing had prepared her for what she was seeing now. Dar. James Wright, her research assistant and the only other person brave enough to work these inhuman hours, looked up from his own terminal. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually pristine lab coat bore the stains of too many hastily consumed meals. "What's wrong, Elena?" "The quantum field stabilizers are holding steady." "Run the simulation again," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible above the laboratory's ambient noise. "And this time, triple-check the sensor calibrations." James nodded and initiated the sequence. The holographic display exploded into brilliant life, showing a three-dimensional map of quantum particles suspended in perfect formation. Each particle glowed like a tiny star, connected to others by streams of pure energy that pulsed with mathematical precision. But there was something fundamentally wrong with the pattern, something that violated every principle of physics Elena had spent 20 years studying. "Professor," James said, his voice beginning to tremble as he analyzed the readouts, "the particles aren't just entangled in a traditional sense. They're actually rewriting the physical laws in their immediate vicinity." Elena felt her heart skip a beat as the implications crashed over her like a tsunami. The quantum field they had created wasn't just bending spacetime, it was editing the very source code of reality itself. According to the sensors, within a 2-meter radius of their experimental apparatus, gravity was flowing upward, time was moving at 1.3 times normal speed, and the fundamental constants that governed atomic interactions had shifted by measurable amounts. "James, do you understand what this means?" Elena's voice cracked with a mixture of excitement and terror. "We haven't just achieved faster-than-light communication. We've found a glitch in the universe's operating system." As if responding to her words, the quantum field pulsed brighter, and for a brief moment, Elena could swear she saw deeper into the fabric of existence itself, layers upon layers of mathematical constructs that formed the foundation of everything that was, is, or ever could be. Meanwhile, 47 light-years away on the crystalline world of Zirion Prime, High Commander HFY's meditation was shattered by an urgent transmission. His 4 eyes snapped open simultaneously, each one focusing on a different aspect of the holographic alert that materialized before him. The Universal Monitoring Network, a galaxy-spanning system designed to detect reality fluctuations, was screaming warnings that made his ancient heart race with fear. "Impossible," HFY whispered, his scaled fingers trembling as he manipulated the data displays. "The humans shouldn't have this capability for another 1,000 cycles." Navigator Kreth burst into the chamber, his normally composed demeanor shattered by panic. "Commander, the readings are off the scale. That primitive species on the 3rd planet of Sol system, they've somehow accessed the reality engine." HFY felt the temperature in the room drop as the implications sank in. If they learned to manipulate the reality engine without proper safeguards, without understanding the consequences, the entire universe could unravel, Kreth finished, his voice barely a whisper. "Alert the Galactic Council immediately," HFY commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Code Omega protocols are now in effect." "And Kreth." He paused, staring at the chaotic energy signatures emanating from the small blue world, pray to whatever gods you worship that were not already too late. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours, a logistical miracle that normally required months of diplomatic preparation, translation protocols, and interspecies etiquette briefings. The Great Assembly Hall of Nexus Station, a massive structure built in the neutral space between galaxies, had never witnessed such urgency. Representatives from 12 different species materialized simultaneously through quantum teleportation arrays, their various forms of faces, energy patterns, and consciousness matrices all displaying the same emotion, absolute cosmic terror. Ambassador Lithka of the Cephalopod Alliance was the first to break protocol, her 7 tentacles writhing in patterns that would have driven human observers insane. The hairless apes have broken reality itself, she screeched through her biotranslator, her chromatophores flashing warning colors that bathed half the assembly in crimson light. My species has existed for 50 million years, survived 3 galactic wars, and witnessed the birth and death of stars, and we've never encountered anything this catastrophically dangerous. Council Leader Mordak, an ancient being of pure crystallized thought energy who had existed since the universe was young, flickered with an anxiety that sent ripples through the quantum foam. His voice resonated directly into the consciousness of every being present. The humans have discovered quantum reality manipulation in their primitive laboratories using technology barely more advanced than controlled fire. They're like newborn children playing with antimatter while sitting on a powder keg. High Commander Vexhai projected holographic data into the center of the assembly, real-time readings from the Universal Monitoring Network that made every representative recoil in horror. The reality distortions are spreading, he announced grimly. 3 star systems have already reported temporal anomalies. The vegan system briefly had 2 moons yesterday before causality corrected itself. We're detecting probability cascades, quantum echoes, and worst of all, reality recursion loops. Meanwhile, on the small blue planet that was causing this galactic crisis, Elena's team remained blissfully unaware of the panic they had unleashed across civilizations. The basement laboratory had become their entire world, a temple of scientific discovery where miracles happened hourly. The quantum field generator hummed with increasing confidence, maintaining a stable reality bubble that defied every natural law with casual indifference. James, you need to see this, Elena called out, her voice trembling with barely contained excitement. Her hands moved through the control interface like a conductor directing an orchestra of fundamental forces. I can make gravity flow upward in this sector, then create a temporal zone where entropy runs backward. James abandoned his own console and rushed to Elena's station, watching in stunned awe as she demonstrated their godlike power. A broken coffee cup that had been shattered hours ago began reassembling itself within the reality bubble, its fragments dancing through the air in perfect reverse choreography. The liquid that had long since evaporated materialized from nothing, flowing upward to fill the reconstructed cup, which then gently floated toward the ceiling as if gravity had simply forgotten how to work properly. This is beyond revolutionary, Elena, James whispered, his voice filled with religious wonder. We're not just bending the laws of physics, we're rewriting them on demand. We could solve every problem humanity has ever faced. Hunger, disease, aging, death itself, none of it would be insurmountable anymore. Elena nodded, her scientific mind racing with possibilities while her hands continued to manipulate forces that had remained unchanged since the Big Bang. We could terraform Mars by simply editing its atmospheric composition. We could make faster-than-light travel routine by temporarily suspending the speed of light limit. We could even. Neither scientist noticed the nearly invisible observation probes that had materialized around their laboratory like technological ghosts, their alien sensors recording every quantum fluctuation and reality manipulation. Nor did they detect the growing armada of vessels taking position just beyond Earth's solar system, ships from dozens of worlds, carrying weapons that could crack planets and technologies that made human achievements look like cave paintings. The galaxy was watching, and the galaxy was terrified. 3 days after their reality-bending discovery, Elena was burning the midnight oil in her laboratory, surrounded by towers of data printouts and empty energy drink cans that formed a fortress around her workstation. The quantum field generator pulsed with a hypnotic rhythm, its gentle hum the only companion to her obsessive research. She had barely slept, barely eaten, driven by the intoxicating knowledge that she was rewriting the fundamental rules of existence itself. The fluorescent lights flickered once, then twice. Elena looked up from her calculations, expecting to see a maintenance worker or perhaps James returning with more coffee. Instead, the air itself began to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Reality seemed to bend and fold, creating impossible geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then he appeared. The figure that materialized was clearly humanoid but obviously not human. His skin possessed a lustrous silver quality, as if he had been carved from living mercury, and his eyes held depths that spoke of eons of accumulated wisdom. He wore no visible clothing, yet somehow projected an aura of dignity and authority that made Elena's lab coat feel inadequate by comparison. Dr. Elena Martinez, the being spoke, though Elena realized with mounting shock that his perfectly formed lips hadn't moved at all. The words appeared directly in her mind, resonating in a voice that carried harmonics impossible for human vocal cords to produce. I am Envoy Ralthan of the Andromedan Collective. We urgently need to discuss your recent experiments. Elena stumbled backward, her rational scientific mind warring with the impossible evidence before her eyes. Her chair crashed into an equipment rack, sending delicate instruments clattering to the floor. This is impossible. Hallucination. I'm having a stress-induced psychotic break. That's the only logical explanation. What you consider impossible has become disturbingly possible since your species discovered the reality engine, Ralthan replied with the patience of someone who had delivered this speech to countless civilizations across the galaxy. His expression remained calm, but Elena detected undertones of grave concern. I'm here to warn you before your continued experiments trigger consequences that cannot be undone. The envoy raised his hand with fluid grace, and Elena watched in stunned silence as her sophisticated laboratory equipment became completely translucent, like three-dimensional ghosts of themselves. Through the transparent walls and machinery, she could see layer upon layer of complex quantum structures, the hidden architecture that supported the illusion of solid matter. You found what we call the universe's source code, Ralthan explained, his mental voice taking on the tone of a patient teacher addressing a particularly dangerous student. The fundamental programming language that defines everything from the speed of light to the mass of electrons. But you're editing this code without understanding the cascading effects your changes create. Elena found her voice, though it emerged as little more than a whisper. We're just conducting small-scale experiments. Localized tests in controlled conditions. Small-scale. Ralthan's expression shifted to something approaching alarm, and suddenly the transparent laboratory equipment was replaced by a vast holographic display showing the Milky Way galaxy in real time. Elena gasped as she saw waves of distortion rippling outward from Earth's location like cracks spreading through cosmic glass. 3 star systems have experienced temporal anomalies because of your small tests. A planet in the vegan system briefly existed in 2 different time periods simultaneously yesterday. You're creating quantum tsunamis in spacetime itself. The holographic display zoomed in on specific star systems, showing planets flickering between different states of existence, moons appearing and disappearing, and space itself rippling like water disturbed by thrown stones. Every advanced civilization reaches this critical juncture, Ralthan continued, his mental voice heavy with the weight of cosmic history. The moment when they discover they can rewrite reality itself. Most species, upon understanding the true implications, choose wisdom over power and lock away this knowledge forever, accepting technological limitations in exchange for universal stability. Elena stared at the galactic display, watching reality distortion spread like a virus through space. And those civilizations that don't choose wisdom? What happens to them? They tear holes in reality itself. Some create paradoxes so severe they erase themselves from existence retroactively. We only know they existed because of quantum echoes in dimensions they couldn't reach. Others break causality so catastrophically that cause and effect become meaningless concepts. The worst cases collapse into what we call reality storms, zones where nothing can exist because the fundamental laws that allow existence have been completely destroyed. The holographic display shifted to show dead zones in space, areas of absolute void where even the quantum foam had been erased, leaving behind scars in the universe that would never heal. Elena called an emergency meeting the next morning, gathering her core research team in the main conference room adjacent to their laboratory. Dr. James Wright arrived clutching his third cup of coffee, followed by Dr. Amanda Foster, their quantum physicist, who looked as sleep-deprived as the rest of them. The team of 8 researchers settled around the polished table, their faces showing a mixture of exhaustion and excitement from days of non-stop breakthrough discoveries. "Everyone, I need to tell you something that's going to sound absolutely insane," Elena began, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep and too much caffeine. "Last night, I was contacted by an extraterrestrial being who warned me that our experiments are causing reality distortions across multiple star systems." The room fell silent for a moment before nervous laughter erupted from several team members. Dr. Michael Torres, their senior physicist, shook his head sympathetically. "Elena, you've been working 18-hour days for 3 months straight. Stress-induced hallucinations are a documented phenomenon in high-pressure research environments. Maybe you should take a sabbatical," James suggested gently, genuine concern etched across his features. "Get some real sleep, spend time away from the lab. This discovery will still be here when you get back." Elena opened her mouth to argue, but her words were cut short by an ear-splitting alarm from the laboratory's monitoring systems. Every screen in the conference room flashed red as emergency protocols engaged automatically. "That's impossible," Dr. Amanda Foster bolted upright, staring at the cascade of error messages flooding their displays. "The quantum field containment protocols show the reality bubble expanding beyond its programmed parameters." The team rushed into the laboratory, where they found their carefully controlled experiment spiraling into chaos. The quantum field generator, which had maintained a stable 2-meter reality manipulation zone for days, was now displaying readings that defied comprehension. The field wasn't just expanding, it was fragmenting, creating dozens of smaller reality bubbles that phased in and out of existence like soap bubbles in a hurricane. "The containment field should be holding steady at 2 meters, Dr. Foster frantically manipulated her controls, her professional composure cracking under the impossible data. "Every safety protocol we built is functioning perfectly, but the field is behaving like it has a mind of its own." Suddenly, the chaotic expansion stopped. Then, impossibly, the field began contracting, but not uniformly. Parts of the quantum manipulation zone moved backward through time while others accelerated forward at different rates. Within the unstable reality bubble, the team could see multiple versions of their own laboratory existing simultaneously. Versions where their equipment was newer, older, completely different, or absent entirely. "My God," James whispered, his coffee cup slipping from nerveless fingers to shatter on the floor, only to reassemble itself moments later as a temporal echo passed through the room. "Elena, what have we done?" Through the chaos, they could see ghostly images of themselves discovering the reality manipulation technique months ago, years in the future, and timelines where they had never made the discovery at all. Past, present, and future versions of their research coexisted in impossible harmony, each timeline as real as the others. Dr. Torres grabbed Elena's arm, his earlier skepticism replaced by raw terror. "Elena, if this field continues expanding, it could engulf the entire building, maybe the whole city. We need to evacuate immediately." That's when Envoy Rao then materialized in the center of the laboratory, this time visible to everyone present. His silver form stood calmly within the reality storm, seemingly unaffected by the temporal chaos swirling around him. "You've created a temporal paradox cascade," he explained with the clinical detachment of a doctor diagnosing a terminal illness. "In approximately 4 minutes and 37 seconds, this paradox will either resolve itself by completely erasing everything within a 50-kilometer radius from existence, or it will stabilize and create a permanent zone where all possible versions of this moment exist forever in superposition." The team stared in horror as the readings showed the paradox strengthening rather than dissipating. Through the quantum chaos, they could see infinite variations of themselves, versions who had made different choices, spoken different words, or never met at all trapped in an eternal loop of possibility. "Can you stop it?" Elena asked desperately, watching her life's work transform into humanity's potential extinction event. Rao then raised his hand with serene confidence, and the chaotic reality field suddenly snapped back into perfect stability. The multiple timelines collapsed into a single, coherent present, leaving the laboratory exactly as it had been before the crisis began. "This time, yes," he replied gravely. "But I cannot keep intervening every time your species accidentally tears holes in spacetime. My presence here is already causing severe political complications among my people, and there are those who believe diplomatic intervention has already failed." High above Earth, invisible to human detection systems that couldn't even comprehend their technology, the largest military gathering in galactic history maintained perfect formation in the void between dimensions. The emergency fleet contained representatives from 47 different species, civilizations that had spent millennia as bitter enemies now united by a single, overwhelming fear. Warships the size of continents hung motionless alongside delicate crystalline vessels that existed partially in 11 dimensions, their weapons systems powered down but ready to unleash destruction that could crack planets or rewrite the fundamental constants of physics itself. The Emergency War Council convened aboard the massive flagship Eternal Vigilance, a Drakmarian dreadnought whose hull had been forged from the compressed matter of a dying star. Admiral Thexmore, his reptilian features scarred by centuries of interstellar conflict, addressed the assembled commanders with grim authority that transcended species barriers. "The Andromedan diplomatic approach has failed catastrophically," he announced, his words translated simultaneously into 47 different languages and consciousness patterns. "Envoy Ralthen's direct intervention has not convinced the humans to cease their reality manipulation experiments. If anything, their curiosity has intensified." War Chieftain Grak Hull of the militant Ursine Confederation, a massive bear-like creature whose species had conquered 12 star systems through sheer ferocity, slammed his armored fist against the council table with enough force to dent the quantum-reinforced surface. "Then we must act decisively. A surgical planetary bombardment targeting their research facilities would end this threat permanently. My fleet stands ready to cleanse this contamination from the galaxy." "Absolutely not." Ambassador Zilthka's tentacles writhed in patterns of absolute rejection, her chromatophores flashing dangerous warning colors. "Attacking a pre-contact species violates 17 different galactic accords that have maintained peace for the last 10,000 years. Besides, destroying their facilities won't destroy the knowledge, it will only scatter the researchers to different locations, making the problem exponentially worse." An ancient representative of the silicon-based crystalline collective, whose consciousness existed as living geometry within a framework of pure crystal, pulsed with deep concern that resonated through the quantum field surrounding the ship. "The humans demonstrate a pattern we have witnessed before in our extensive archives. They possess the dangerous combination of intelligence sufficient to discover reality manipulation, but lack the wisdom necessary to understand its implications." "Tell them about the Vorthons," whispered Navigator Kreth, his voice barely audible but carrying the weight of cosmic horror. The crystalline being's glow dimmed with ancient sorrow. "The Vorthon Empire discovered reality manipulation 15 million years ago, during the Third Galactic Expansion. They were brilliant, ambitious, and utterly convinced of their superiority over the universe's natural laws. They began using reality manipulation to terraform worlds, extend their lifespans, and eventually to remake themselves into beings of pure thought." "What happened to them?" asked Commander Zephys of the Aquatic Federation, her gill slits fluttering with nervous anticipation. "They succeeded in their ambitions," the crystalline collective representative replied. "Unfortunately, gods who can rewrite reality on a whim eventually develop conflicting visions of what reality should be. The resulting reality war consumed an entire galactic arm. The Vorthons erased themselves so completely that we only know they existed because of archaeological evidence preserved in pocket dimensions they couldn't access. Their former territory remains a dead zone where causality itself was permanently broken." The War Council fell silent as holographic displays showed the Vorthon Dead Zone, a region of space where stars flickered between existing and not existing, where time flowed backward and forward simultaneously, and where the very concept of matter had become negotiable. Meanwhile, on Earth, Elena's team had reluctantly agreed to halt their experiments pending further analysis. But they weren't the only humans working with quantum reality research. Deep within a classified facility buried beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Marcus Kane's military research team had been monitoring Elena's published papers with growing excitement. "Imagine the tactical applications," Kane explained enthusiastically to General Rodriguez, his eyes gleaming with visions of military supremacy. Soldiers who could phase through walls by temporarily making themselves incorporeal. Weapons that could bypass any armor by existing in a different dimensional state. We could make enemy missiles simply cease to exist by editing them out of reality. General Rodriguez leaned forward, intrigued despite his caution. "And the risks that these civilian scientists keep mentioning?" Kane waved dismissively, his confidence absolute. "Manageable with proper military discipline and controlled applications. We're talking about precision reality editing, not the reckless experiments those academics are conducting. Small-scale, localized, tactical modifications. Nothing like the doomsday scenarios these paranoid civilians are imagining." Neither man noticed the microscopic alien monitoring devices that had infiltrated their facility, or the emergency signals now racing toward the galactic fleet at faster-than-light speeds. The galaxy's worst fears were being realized, the humans were weaponizing reality itself. Within hours of Dr. Kane's team activating their military-grade reality manipulation device, every alien vessel in the solar system went to maximum combat alert. Warning klaxons echoed through ships that had remained hidden in dimensional folds for weeks, and weapon systems that could atomize moons began their activation sequences. The humans weren't just experimenting anymore, they were weaponizing the fundamental forces of existence itself. Emergency Protocols Omega-7 are now in effect, Admiral Thexmore broadcast across all frequencies to the assembled fleet. The human military has successfully created and deployed a reality weapon. All diplomatic solutions are hereby suspended indefinitely. On Earth, Dr. Kane's first field test seemed almost anticlimactically successful. Deep within the Nevada facility's testing chambers, his team had created what they proudly called a phase rifle. A weapon that could make projectiles temporarily non-corporeal, allowing them to pass through any armor, wall, or defensive barrier before returning to solid matter inside the target. The implications for modern warfare were staggering and terrifying in equal measure. "Sir, the initial tests exceeded all parameters," Kane's lead weapons engineer, Dr. Rebecca Collins, reported with barely contained excitement. "We've successfully phased tungsten rounds through 6 inches of titanium steel composite armor. The bullets rematerialize with perfect accuracy on the other side." Kane nodded approvingly as he watched the test footage replay on multiple screens. "What about the gravity manipulation applications?" Even more promising, Collins pulled up additional data streams. "We've created localized gravity wells that can literally make enemy aircraft fall upward. Imagine dogfights where we control the fundamental forces affecting both combatants. No existing military technology could counter this advantage." But their celebration was cut short when the facility's main blast doors exploded inward, not destroyed, but somehow convinced that they had never existed in the first place. Elena Martinez strode through the impossible breach, flanked by Envoy Ralven and 2 heavily armored alien soldiers whose presence seemed to bend light around their forms. "Dr. Kane, you need to shut down this program immediately," Elena demanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed the universe's deeper truths. "You're about to trigger the first interstellar war in human history." Kane stared at the aliens in shock, his rational military mind struggling to process their existence. General Rodriguez, who had arrived for the testing demonstration, reached instinctively for his sidearm before realizing the futility of such a gesture. What are they?" he stammered. "Representatives of approximately 47 different alien civilizations," Ralven replied with diplomatic calm, though his mental voice carried undertones of barely controlled urgency. "All of whom are currently positioned throughout your solar system, debating whether to implement protective measures to prevent your species from accidentally unraveling universal stability." "That's impossible," General Rodriguez stepped forward, his military training overriding his amazement. "If there were alien fleets, our orbital defense networks would have detected them." "You mean like this?" Ralven gestured with fluid grace, and suddenly the facility's reinforced concrete walls became completely transparent, revealing the star-filled void beyond. But the stars weren't alone. Massive alien vessels hung in the darkness like celestial mountains, their hulls gleaming with technologies that made human engineering look like stone tools. Kane's entire research team went pale as they realized they were looking at the most powerful military force in galactic history. Ships that dwarfed aircraft carriers floated alongside crystalline structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy readings displayed on their screens showed weapon systems that could crack continents and defensive shields that existed outside normal spacetime. The positive news, Rao then continued with the patience of someone accustomed to delivering ultimatums to civilizations, is that the majority of fleet commanders still prefer diplomatic resolution to military intervention. The negative news is that your weaponization of reality manipulation has convinced many species that diplomacy has definitively failed. As if summoned by his words, warning sirens began blaring throughout the underground facility. Every screen flashed red as their sensors detected massive energy buildups from dozens of alien vessels. Targeting systems that could pinpoint individual molecules were locking onto the facility, while reality-warping weapons began charging for deployment. Dr. Kane looked at his life's work, weapons that could rewrite the rules of warfare itself, then at the alien armada that could erase his entire planet with casual indifference. The galaxy's patience was measured in minutes now, not days. "What do you want from us?" he whispered, finally understanding that humanity was no longer the dominant species on their own world. In an unprecedented demonstration of galactic diplomacy, the Galactic Council agreed to direct contact with Earth's political leadership. Within 6 hours of the decision, every major government on the planet received identical quantum-encrypted messages that materialized directly on their leaders' desks, bypassing every security system humanity had ever devised. The message was simple: representatives would gather at the United Nations building in New York for the most important meeting in human history. The assembly hall had been transformed into something beyond human imagination. Advanced alien technology had expanded the space itself, creating a vast amphitheater that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Elena stood among world leaders from every nation, watching in awe as beings from across the galaxy materialized around them in a display that redefined humanity's understanding of life itself. President Harrison of the United States stood beside Prime Minister Chen of the European Federation, Chancellor Okonkwo of the African Alliance, and dozens of other leaders whose political differences suddenly seemed trivial in the face of cosmic intervention. They watched creatures of living crystal pulse with mathematical consciousness, sentient energy patterns that communicated through quantum fluctuations, insectoid hive minds whose individual components moved in perfect synchronization, and beings so alien that human perception could barely process their existence. Council leader Mordak, his crystallized thought energy form towering above the assembly, addressed the humans with the weight of eons behind his words. "Your species has achieved something remarkable and terrifying. You have discovered the fundamental operating system of reality itself in what amounts to your technological infancy. Most civilizations require millions of years of evolution and wisdom before they encounter this knowledge." Elena stepped forward, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "We understand the dangers now. We're willing to learn, to accept guidance from civilizations with more experience." "The technology cannot be guided or controlled," replied an ancient representative of the ethereal conclave, whose voice seemed to come from empty space itself. "Reality manipulation is not merely a tool, it is the force that allows tools to exist. When you edit reality, you risk editing away the very concepts that define existence, consciousness, and life itself." Dr. Kane, who had been transported to the assembly under heavy alien escort, finally spoke up with desperate defiance. "You can't expect humanity to simply forget what we've learned. This knowledge represents the solution to every problem our species has ever faced: hunger, disease, aging, death, resource scarcity. We could create paradise. And accidentally erase the concept of paradise from reality while attempting to build it," the Crystalline Collective's representative replied with crystalline logic. "We have witnessed this pattern across galactic history. The power to rewrite reality is always discovered before the wisdom to understand its true cost. The chamber fell into profound silence as Mordak outlined humanity's three choices with the solemnity of a judge pronouncing sentence. First, your species voluntarily agrees to seal away all reality manipulation research forever and joins the galactic community as a protected developing civilization. You will receive access to conventional technologies that will advance your society by thousands of years, faster than light travel, unlimited clean energy, medical technologies that extend lifespans to centuries, terraforming capabilities that could turn any world into paradise. But reality manipulation remains absolutely forbidden. Second, we provide you with complete knowledge of reality manipulation, including all safeguards and theoretical frameworks developed by successful civilizations. However, your species will be quarantined to this solar system until you demonstrate the wisdom necessary to use this power without threatening universal stability. This maturation process typically requires between 50,000 and 1 million years of careful development. Third, Mordak's expression darkened with cosmic sorrow. If your species refuses both previous options and continues unsupervised reality manipulation research, the Galactic Council will implement protective measures to safeguard universal stability. Elena understood the diplomatic euphemism with crystal clarity. You mean eliminate us? We mean ensure that the threat to the fundamental structure of existence is permanently resolved, Mordak corrected with careful precision. World leaders huddled in desperate consultation while alien representatives waited with the patience of beings who measured time in geological epochs. The weight of humanity's future, and possibly the universe's continued existence, rested on their collective decision. Finally, Elena found the courage to voice the question that would determine everything. Before we choose, I need to know, how many civilizations have faced this exact choice? Approximately 200,000 species over the past billion years, the ethereal conclave representative answered without hesitation. And how many chose the second option? Full knowledge with quarantine. The aliens exchanged glances that transcended species barriers, their expressions universally grim. 17 civilizations have ever chosen that path. Of those, 3 eventually developed sufficient wisdom to safely manipulate reality. They now serve as senior advisors to our council. Elena's heart sank as she asked the inevitable follow-up question. And the other 14? They destroyed themselves through reality manipulation accidents before completing their quarantine period. Most erased themselves from existence so completely that we only remember them through quantum archaeological evidence. Elena looked around at humanity's leaders, then at the alien representatives who held the power to end human civilization with a casual thought. Finally, she looked at Dr. Kane, who still clutched his reality weapon prototypes as if they were humanity's salvation rather than potential instruments of cosmic destruction. I know what my choice would be, she said quietly. But this decision belongs to all of humanity, and the consequences will echo through eternity. As the United Nations prepared for the most important vote in human history, Elena couldn't escape one terrifying question: would humanity choose wisdom over power, or would they join the countless species who had gambled with the very nature of existence? And lost everything? The future of the human race, and possibly the universe itself, hung in the balance of a single decision.